Thank you, Steinar. Can you hear me? Yeah? Thank you for the introduction. And very nice to see you here. Are you sure you want to be seated so far back? There are several seats further up front here. Anyway, I thought I would start out talking a little bit about the background for this seminar, even though Steinar said something about it, but it's good to just recall the actual works, I think, and the actual reason, which is that I made this exhibition at Bergen Kunsthall. It was this year's festival exhibition, and it was entirely placed outside of the actual building of the Kunsthall. It was the first time the festival exhibition exited the building, and this was, of course, something that we knew would produce a different dynamics around the exhibition than what has often been the case. The exhibition consisted of three elements. One was Vima. It was, I guess most of you have seen it. It was an installation built up of the remains of Norwegian-Russian trawler Vima, originally called Meløyvær and registered in Bergen. It was exhibited just outside the main entrance of Bergen Kunsthall. So it kind of created a friction or contrast to the surroundings, which are all very nice and decorative and pretty. Yeah. The other element, the two artworks, that was one of the artworks. The other artwork was this piece. It was a performance called Diamond. It consisted of the gift from me to Bergen Kunsthall. I very often use this strategy of giving gifts because it kind of challenges hierarchic patterns or structures present in different situations. And this was a gift from me to Bergen Kunsthall of a diamond of 1.26 carat. It was not very big. I have never bought a diamond before, so I was expecting it to be much bigger. It's actually quite tiny and positioned inside a small metal case and encased then during the performance in the facade of the Kunsthall. And during this performance, there was also a song performed by Norwegian singer Guri Egge. She performed an aria from La Tosca called Vissi d'arte, which means I lived for art. The meaning of this work was to, differently from many of my other gifts, not to criticize the Kunsthall or the receiver of the gift, but it was actually to strengthen the receiver. It was an approval, or it was really an offer to the Kunsthall, and it has a symbolic meaning to strengthen the Kunsthall towards pressure from the outside. And of course, in this case, the Kunsthall becomes a protector of art production. The third element was the book, a reader. This consisted of texts by Solveig Øvstebø, curator of the whole exhibition, critic Kim West, who's here and will talk afterwards, economist and journalist Loretta Napoleoni, anthropologist Thomas Hylland Eriksen, and cultural theorist, curator and poet Ranjit Hoskote. Is it correct the way I say your name? Yeah, more or less. This reader was supposed to be, it was a tool for us during, now I say us, meaning me and the curators and all the great people at Bergen Kunsthall. It was a tool to research and understand more about the topic of the exhibition, because it's a very complex and labyrinthic, difficult, complicated field, the field of economics and the relationship between art production, cultural capital and financial capital. That has been the main topic of most of my art production over the last, I would say, almost 15 years by now. So the whole exhibition project was a logical consequence of research that I have been working on for many years now. But still, I feel that this topic is extremely difficult, and I have only a superficial understanding of it. So the reader was a help for me during the process to understand more and feel that I was actually able to talk about this in more or less a correct way. And it was a tool for the audience in order to understand what I was trying to do here. These three elements consisted, all together, they made up the exhibition project. And they were supposed to kind of support each other as well. Yeah. So the project in its entirety tried to look at different value systems, how they are compatible and how they are not compatible, and what escapes these systems when we try to translate something from one system to another, to describe it with another system, something is lost. And I was interested in looking at concretely, what is this loss? What is lost? And then I tried to relate this to art production with the current financial crisis and Norway's exceptionally privileged position as a rich petroleum nation as a backdrop. Now this privilege, of course, extends also to me. I don't sell much of my artwork, except I should mention the diamond was actually paid for with money I made from selling works, from earlier works, to the National Museum. So that is paid for by my own entering into the market, the art market somehow. But of course, generally, it is possible for me to maintain my position and work in the way that I do because I am part of the privileged art field in Norway. The conditions that we work in are unique in the world, and it's easy to take it for granted, but this is something that I try to be very transparent about. It's an important part of my work also to discuss this. Yeah, so this seminar is an attempt to sum up, analyze, and discuss reactions and results of the project, because the whole point of the project was to raise some questions, to put some questions out there, questions that I think are extremely important and very urgent, and they regard us in the art field, and they regard everyone in the world, really. It's a very big and urgent question, or questions. I think this was partly successful. We received a lot of attention. That is unusual for me to get so much attention, to have that kind of media coverage, so much interest, so much discussion after a project. Of course, it's also because of the format. The festival exhibition has been built up as a tradition, and there are huge expectations connected to the exhibition. And the exhibition was also, my exhibition was also trying to challenge some of these expectations. I think there, in all this, now in reading through all this material, all the reactions, all the reviews, all the messages, all the blogs, everything that I have received, I think it is good to pick it up and look at it and discuss it, so that this actually becomes not a closed and finished question, but possibly a discussion leading somewhere else, pointing out somewhere else, as a continued conversation. Because sometimes I feel that when an artist has an exhibition, there's an enormous effort, a great investment, lots of work being put into it. You present the work, there is reviews, there is reactions and debates, but it's kind of very quickly closed down. Now, this exhibition has no intention of claiming that this is the last word said about the financial crisis. Obviously, it's not. It's just an attempt of using art actively in approaching the problems or starting a discussion, trying out some possible positions towards it. So I wanted to kind of pick up all this stuff and look at it again. So I've read through everything, and the responses to the exhibition project have been very many, some very thorough, others very immediate, very varied in every way. And I'm very, very happy about this. And I think it's, well, most of it is, this is also something I need to say, most of it is very nice, positive, even polite, which is great. But I think there is, I think it's possible to see maybe 4 major categories of criticism, or kind of split it up into 4 bigger ways of dealing with it. The first is general irritation, I have called it. This is something we knew would be coming, and we actually actively searched for it. In positioning it outside of the Kunsthalle, you know that you will be meeting a different audience than in positioning something inside of the designated spaces for art. So the audience, as Steinar said, consisted of other people. It was impossible to avoid seeing the work. You didn't have to seek it out actively. It was enough just to wander around in the center of Bergen and you would meet the work. And this means that large parts of the audience to Vima was not prepared and not informed and met this kind of work for the first time without maybe references or information in order to position it into some kind of discourse. These reactions mostly state that the installation is ugly, it's not art, it's garbage. My tax money should not pay for this. I hope she is cleaning up after herself. You're shaming the city of Bergen, etc. And it's generally a bit unarticulated and a bit uninformed, but it's very, very engaged. It is put forward through blogs, very often after the articles on the web pages of major newspapers. You can write in your own thoughts about things, and that's a place where these things very often are put forward. And the other way they were often expressed was by contacting the guards. There was a small, what can we call it? Small cottage almost, built by the Kunsthalle, where there was one guard all the time, every day. And the job for this guard was basically to talk to the audience, explain the work as far as possible, receive reactions, and sell the book, just, you know, be available for the audience. So they received lots of reactions, and the people who contact someone like that in this kind of situation, I think there is a threshold to pass when you do something like that. So these people were driven by really a lot of emotional energy. They were really angry, some of them. So I talked to Helena before, and she said sometimes it's been a very hard job to be in this position because people were very angry. And it's easy maybe from my position as artist, and I mean, I am informed about the discourses that Vima is part of. It's easy to kind of dismiss this as uninformed and ignorant and even laugh it off a bit. But I have been thinking that it's important to take these things seriously, even though they are not articulated in a way that we are used to. I mean, we actively sought out this audience. So this friction, I think, needs to be looked at a bit more thoroughly, maybe, and to look at whether it's actually productive. Did it produce something, or did it just produce irritation? I guess some of the people who liked it did not approach the guards. I hope that's the case. But anyway, I think the way it is articulated is not so important. The fact is that there was a meeting, and this meeting kind of confirms a sort of lack of trust between the artist and the art production and a more general audience. So it's like we have performed classical roles really in this. I have been the crazy artist and they have been outraged by me. But is there something more to this? Is it really possible for my kind of artwork to produce reflection when it is put out in public space? That's something I would like to discuss a bit. Does it work at all? And then there is a lot of artistically informed and aesthetical formal judgments and also objections. These look at Vima as a sculpture and describe it as dynamic, aggressive, masculine, closed, strict, decorative, whatever it is. It's more a descriptive way of talking about it, and it is informed by classical art studies. Some of this is difficult to discuss much because it tends to become a question of beauty and of personal tastes. Of course, to me, beauty is very important. I always strive towards it, but beauty is a very vague concept. So I thought maybe the most important, I just wanted to show you also some of the reactions here. This was one of the blog, I'm sorry, I will get back to this, I just was forgetting this. One of the blog posts in a whole series of really angry blog interventions about this is really crap. There was this one text from one of the sailors or fishermen who had been working at Vima, kind of not really defending the artwork, but talking about Vima in a nicer way. I thought that was kind of moving. It was a different way of relating to the topic, but I still thought that was nice. And then there was this thing that happened, that a man almost moved into Vima. He was a homeless guy, he's a homeless guy, and he just stayed inside of Vima for a lot of time and was extremely engaged with Vima. So he wrote texts, and he was very active in seeking out the guard there. There was a lot of talks going on and exchanges with this person. So I just wanted to show you these things as well. Anyway, I thought that one of the things that was interesting when it came to the more formal questions was exactly how the exhibition broke with some expectations as to what an exhibition should be. And there was one critic who pointed at, he arrived after the opening and said it felt like coming to a party after it was closed. I stood there and there was this video, but it was over really. And he said maybe it would be interesting to look at how the short duration of the work relates to what the exhibition talks about, which is the market and the general financial crisis, what is possible to sell and what is not possible to sell. I thought that's maybe also something to look into. And then there are more conceptual problems and doubts, and this is where it gets more difficult to navigate. There is a lot of confusion around my position and the meaning of the project, and people find it unclear. They ask, who am I to criticize? How can I criticize this? I am also part of a circulation of goods and of wealth, and I'm part of a system. Isn't art part of the problem? I mean, we sell art to rich people. Maybe this very wrong or unfair distribution of wealth in society is actually good for art. Some artists have made good money on that. Do I actually believe that art is or should be pure? I don't, of course, but some people understood it like I did. And why wasn't I just rather criticizing Bergen Kunsthall, which would be more easy to grasp? And it's also, I think, based on what I have been doing earlier, where the criticism has been directed directly at the receiver of my gifts. I think generally, maybe here the problem was that I was dealing with something that we in the cultural field feel estranged from. It is a complex and difficult and almost labyrinthic field. It's very, very hard to navigate. And some of the even very informed texts tend to mess up concepts such as economy, finance, and capitalism, as if they were one and the same thing. So I think this shows that my feeling of not understanding and, unfamiliarity with this huge system that actually controls everything around us, it is something that I share with the rest of my professional field. It is not just my problem, it is very present in the art field and probably also in the population at large. Now, I was discussing this earlier with a critic who's here, Kim West, and he said, well, it's not easy to be a critic. And that's true. It's not easy, and it's not easy to be an artist and deal with these things. But this is actually one of the biggest problems in the world today. It's one of the biggest challenges. And we are still in the middle of a huge financial crisis, and we don't really know the outcome of it yet. So for the art field to be so uninformed, I think, is a problem if we want art to really be participating and contributing to public discourse, really. especially considering that so much of today's art production is politically more or less informed and positioned. So I thought, I am not able to talk about these things any more clearly than I do through my artwork. I am an artist. So we decided that we would invite someone who is able to talk about these things and give us the tools that we maybe need to be more clear than I have been able to, and the critics have been able to, and maybe the whole art field in Norway is able to. And there's also one last thing that I wanted to just mention, that I think maybe there is a slight difference in Norway compared to other countries in the reception of the urgency of these problems, because we have a lot of money in Norway. We are extremely privileged, and it feels maybe like these questions are not so urgent here. So I was thinking that maybe that is also why it has been so silent around these questions, actually. Why is there so little discussion going on around these topics? I was thinking maybe it's special to Norway, that we are very comfortably positioned with all the petroleum money. I don't know. I just wanted to ask the question. And then I think I will just leave the word to Ingrid. Okay?